My name's Chanel Johnson. I'm the first full-time Black and Minorities student officer. I'm proud to present our Black History lecture series, opened with Extraordinary Wealth by Robin Walker.
Today's session is called Evidence of Extraordinary Wealth and Great Opulence in Early West Africa. Some people are wondering, well, who the heck am I and why should I be listening to this? Well, my name is Robin Walker. I'm also known as the Black History Man. And I'm the author of a book called When We Ruled. I'm also the author of something called Black Economic Empowerment. And what I do for a living is I teach Black history and Black studies in various venues. I've been doing that since 1992 in London, Liverpool 8, High Wycombe, Birmingham, Bristol, Leeds, Bradford and Huddersfield. In this session, I will be presenting research from my book, Everyday Life in an Early West African Empire. Now, to introduce the topic area, 5th of April 2012, The Sun carried an intriguing article called Timbuktu. The subtitle asks, "Rebels hit legendary city, but where is it?" And the article goes on to say, "It is perhaps the world's most evocative place name, conjuring up hazy images of a fabled land at the ends of the earth. A recent survey showed that 1/3 of Brits even think it is make-believe, but this week reality bit in Timbuktu. Radical Islamist rebels seized control of the ancient trading hub in civil warfare that has engulfed the West African nation of Mali. It is the latest twist in a settlement with an extraordinary history, a history every bit as exotic and strange as its name," says the Sun. So people are wondering, Timbuktu, where is this? On a map, it'll be in West Africa, the country Mali, and it's an ancient city still there with its ancient heritage intact. So what happened? Radical Islamists occupied the medieval city of Timbuktu in early April 2012. They threatened to destroy its medieval monuments. They threatened to burn its old manuscripts. And the world reacted to this threat, seeing that an important part of human heritage could end up destroyed. The French government launched Operation Serval to chase the terrorists out before they could destroy everything. So what was in those manuscripts? According to the Smithsonian magazine, I'm quoting now, the manuscripts paint a portrait of Timbuktu as the Cambridge or Oxford of its day, where from the 1300s to the late 1500s, students came from as far away as the Arabian Peninsula to learn at the feet of masters of law, literature and the sciences. At a time when Europe was emerging from the Middle Ages, African historians were chronicling the rise and fall of Saharan and Sudanese kings. Sudanese, in this context, West African. Replete with great battles and invasions, astronomers charted the movement of the stars, physicians provided instructions on nutrition and the therapeutic properties of desert plants, and ethicists debated such issues as polygamy and the smoking of tobacco, says the Smithsonian Institute. They say more. They quote a historian called Tal Tamari, a historian at the National Center for Scientific Research in Paris, who recently visited Timbuktu and said, "These discoveries are going to revolutionize what one thinks about West Africa." Now, the question here is, why should these findings revolutionize our thinking about what one thinks about West Africa? Here's why. If you surveyed people from all over the world and asked one question, what history does early West Africa possess? I believe 98% of the people would say slavery. Black people as somebody else's slaves. West Africa as a hunting ground for people to enslave. Now, here is an example of a surviving manuscript revolutionizing our perspective on early West Africa. The manuscript is called History for the Truth Seeker. A Timbuktu professor, Mahmoud Kati, began it between 1519 and his death in 1593. His grandson, Ibn el-Mukhtar, added other information after his death. So what does the manuscript say? Mahmud Kati divided the history of the West African desert region into the rise and fall of three huge empires. The first empire was ancient Ghana. The second empire was medieval Mali. The third empire was the Songhai Empire. And historians still use this basic model when they are writing, researching and teaching about the desert belt of West Africa. Now, as an example, Kati recorded the typical night ritual of the ancient Ghanaian emperor. His title was the Kayamaga, and he lived in the 7th century AD. And this is what Kati recorded. The Kayamaga came out every night after nightfall to spend discussing with his subjects. But he only leaves his palace only after they assembled 1,000 logs in front of the doors of the palace, under which they set fire. That light produced by the fire lit the space between the sky and the earth, bringing light to the whole city. And then after that, the prince would come out and install himself over a platform of red gold. Now, there's a contemporaneous 11th century source which says this about the court of the Emperor of Ghana. The source says, when he gives audience to his people, the emperor, he sits in a pavilion around which stand his horses caparisoned in cloth of gold. Behind him stand 10 pages holding shields and gold-mounted swords. And on his right hand are the sons of the princes of his empire, splendidly clad and with gold plaited into their hair. The governor of the city is seated on the ground in front of the king, and all around him are his ministers in the same position. The gate of the chamber is guarded by dogs of an excellent breed, who never leave the king's seat. They wear collars of gold and silver. This is taken from El-Bekri's book, The Book of the Roads and Kingdoms, published in 1067 AD. And that raises the question, was England representing like this in 1066 AD? I think not. There's a 10th century source, and it says this about the relationship between the city-state of Audoghast and the ruler of Ghana. The source says, the king of Audoghast maintains relations with the king of Ghana. The ruler of Ghana is the richest king on the face of the earth, by reason of the wealth and treasures of nuggets dug up in the past by his predecessors and by himself. That's taken from Ibn Hawqal, Surat al-Ad, 951 AD. By the way, the same Ibn Hawqal visited the region and witnessed a merchant from Audoghast writing another merchant from Sijil Mesa a check for 42,000 golden dinars. This is over 1,000 years ago. This all contradicts the common notion of a poor and backward Africa with no documented history. So where did all this wealth come from? International trade formed the basis on which the Ghana Empire stood. Through control of caravan routes, Ghana traded in clothes, fabrics, jewels, armour, weapons, precious metals. Most importantly, they traded salt, ivory and gold. There were camel caravans, especially in the north. There were donkey caravans in the south. Goods also moved by barge, and goods were carried by head porters. Later empires would use the same trading networks. Here I've got a map of the Malian Empire at its height in the 14th century, ruling over what we would today call Senegal, Gambia, Guinea, Mali and Mauritania. According to the BBC, in the 14th century, the century of the scythe, natural disasters threatened civilizations with extinction. The Black Death kills more people in Europe, Asia and North Africa than any catastrophe has before. Civilizations which avoid the plague thrive. In West Africa, the Empire of Mali becomes the richest in the world, says the BBC. What I've just read is how the BBC opened one of their programmes, Millennium, 1000 Years of History, which was a series filmed in 1999, and the programme devoted to the 14th century. That is how they began the programme. Now, what happened in 1324 was one of the great rulers of the Malian Empire. His name was Mansa Musa I. In 1324, he took 60,000 people with him on a pilgrimage to Mecca. According to historian Lady Lugard, writing in 1905, Musa I carried over £1 million worth of gold dust to cover his expenses for the trip. According to the website www.measuringworth.com, £1 million would be conservatively equal to £87,820,000 at 2011 prices. Musa I wrecked the Egyptian and Arabian economy by this trip. The historians record that it took 12 years for normality to return to this region. That raises the question, could Bill Gates do this today? That's a good question. Okay, so what's the press saying? The Daily Mail, 15th of October 2012, had a headline, "Meet the 14th century African king who was richest man in the world of all time, adjusted for inflation," says Olivia Fleming. She continues, "An obscure king who ruled West Africa in the 14th century has been named the richest person in history in a new inflation-adjusted list of the world's 25 wealthiest people of all time. Spanning 1,000 years and with a combined fortune of $4.317 trillion, only 3 of the list's 25 are alive today. None of them are women and 14 of them are American. Using the annual 2,199.6% rate of inflation, the list includes familiar names like Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, but sitting at number 1 is Mansa Musa I of Mali." So what's the rest of the press saying? The Daily Express, 17th of October 2012, had the headline, "Revealed the richest person ever." And then the article by Julie Carpenter and Simon Edge went on to say, "The African king, whose £250 billion empire, says a new inflation-adjusted survey, was worth 3 times Bill Gates's fortune." They then go on to have a short bio of Mansa Musa I. They went on to say he lived 1280 to 1337. Musa, whose title Mansa meant King of Kings, ruled the Mali Empire, in brackets, a large part of West Africa, including the city of Timbuktu, which provided half the world's supply of gold from 3 huge mines. A devout Muslim, he established Mali as an intellectual hub of the world. And then the second biography they have is the second richest family in this case, the Rothschild family, 217 billion. So Mansa Musa I's wealth tops the Rothschilds. Now, after this, we get a third empire in the region, the Songhai Empire. It dominates in the 16th century, ruling against Senegal, Gambia, Guinea, Mali, Mauritania, but extending into Nigeria and into Niger. And there's a 16th century visitor who describes the city of Timbuktu. That visitor was Leo Africanus, and he wrote, "In Timbuktu there are numerous judges, doctors and clerics, all receiving good salaries from the king. He pays great respect to men of learning. There is a big demand for books in manuscript imported from North Africa. More profit is made from the book trade than any other line of business," says Leo Africanus, writing in 1526. The same visitor wrote, "Corn, cattle, milk and butter. This region yields in abundance, but salt is very scarce. Salt is brought here by land from Tagaza, which is 500 miles away. When I myself was here, I saw 1 camel load of salt sold for 80 ducats. The king of Timbuktu is rich and has many plates and sceptres of gold. Some weigh 1,300 pounds, and he keeps a magnificent and well-furnished court, says Leo Africanus, 1526. A modern scholar, Lady Lugard, wrote, systems of banking and credit, which seems to have existed under the earlier kings of Mali, were improved. Banking remained chiefly in the hands of the Arabs, from whom letters of credit could be procured, which were operative throughout the Sudan, that is West Africa, and were used by the black travelling merchants as well as by Arab traders. This is from Lady Lugard's A Tropical Dependency of 1905. And it also highlights a major weakness of the Songhai Empire. You cannot allow non-Africans to be controlling your banking sector. So what happened in the end? Well, there was a sinister alliance between Sultan El-Mansur of Morocco and Queen Elizabeth I of England. The English sold arms to Morocco, and they invaded the Songhai Empire in 1591 and destroyed it. And it's after the destruction of the Songhai Empire that the slave trade explodes. This concludes the presentation. If you would like more information on this topic, consult our book Everyday Life in an Early West African Empire.